inside of take picture, I want to use this image picker to, well, take an image. And for this, we should first of all add a new import where we import from the image picker library and there from the image picker Dart file. And then in take picture, we can create a new image picker object by instantiating the image picker class, which is provided by image picker, by this library. And this will give us such an image picker, which I'll store in a final variable. And this image picker can then be used to call the pickImage method. Now, as you see, there are also some alternatives like pickVideo or allowing the user to pick multiple images. But here it's pickImage, and next we have to specify a source. Now that source must be an image source value, so a value of type image source, and image source simply is another enum in this case here, provided by the image picker library. This offers us different sources, two to be precise, so that we either use the gallery or the camera. And here I want to use the camera so that the user must take a new image, but of course you could also allow the gallery here. You could also add an extra button, one for opening the camera and one for using the gallery, but here I'll go for the camera. Now there are additional parameters that can be set on pickImage. For example, you can control the image quality or the max height or width. And here I will indeed set a max width of 600 so that the image is scaled down and we don't have super large images which take up a lot of space on disk and also take long to load. And with that, I configured this image picker, and now pickImage will actually return a future which eventually returns an X file. Now what's that? Well, it's not a TV series. Instead, it is simply a file that contains the image. An X file simply is a type that represents that file. So since it's a future, we could use then here to get hold to that file that is eventually yielded. Or alternatively, we add async here, and then we can await this and we'll then get our picked image here, which is that file. And in the next line, we can then therefore use that image. Now, as you see, it's actually an optional value. It may be null because, of course, the user may open that camera and start the image picking process without then actually taking a photo. Instead, the user could just close the camera without taking a picture, and therefore then, of course, picked image would be null. Therefore here I want to check if picked image is equal to null, in which case I'll just return and not do anything else. But if we make it past this if statement here, I know that I do have an image, and in that case I want to show that image. I want to replace that text button with a preview of that image. And for that here in this state class we should add a new variable which should actually be of type file, not X file, but file, because we'll need that file type later for showing a preview of that image, which I'll name taken image or selected image. Now the file type is not available like this. Instead, for it to be available, you must import Dart and then from there the IOSUB package. And with that, then here we have that file type. And since I am defining a type here, of course, as you learned, you should omit var. Now this can also be null though, hence the question mark, because initially, for example, I don't have a file, I don't have an image, but I'll set it here after we took an image. So then I'll set selected image equal to picked image. But now here the problem will be that picked image is of type X file, and that's not compatible with that file type I actually want to store in selected image. Hence we must convert the X file to a normal file, and thankfully that's super easy to do. We just instantiate the file class that is provided by Dart, like this, and we have to pass pickedimage.path as a value to file. So this picked image has various properties and methods that allow us to interact with that file, and it, for example, has a path property that is simply the path to that image file on that device. because as we take that image, it is stored on the device, and this path tells us where it's stored. And if we pass such a path to this file class here, we then get a file object that stores that path and that can be used with that file type here. And I'm doing all of that because now we can go down to the widget tree, and there we can render this button conditionally by adding an extra variable of type widget, which could be the content of this container. And that could by default be our text button. So I will cut this button and store that in content. But if selected image is not null, so if I have a selected image, then I want to override content and instead store some widget in it that previews my image. And for that here, we can use the image widget built into Flutter and construct it with the file constructor method, because that constructor method allows us to create an image and show an image on the screen based on some file of type file, because image wants an input which is of type file. It then has many other properties, many other parameters, which allow us to configure how the image will be displayed, but it always needs such a file. So therefore here, I'll pass a file, and the file of course will be my selected image, which I know won't be null here. So I can add the exclamation mark because I'm checking for it to not be null here. I'll then also add the fit parameter to set the automatic sizing of that image to box fit cover to make sure that it will always look good even if it must be resized. And it's then the content that's output here. Now with that all done, if you save everything, you should stop this running session here and restart your app. Because if you add a library that uses some native device features, it often won't work if you don't do such a complete restart. That's why I'm doing it here. And with that done, if you go to this Add New Place screen and click Take Picture, the camera should open up. And on iOS, on the simulator, this will not work. There is no camera simulator there. You would have to test it on a real device on iOS instead. And there you should be open to open the camera. And there you should then also be asked for permission the first time you're getting there. And once granted, you can take images there as well. But here on Android, you have this camera mode, this simulator here, and you can take a picture and then confirm this, and if you do so, it should show up here, except for that it doesn't. And of course it doesn't show up here, because when I am setting my selected image here in Take Picture, I'm not using setState, and we still need to do that. Even though it's an image and we were in that camera, we still need to call setState to tell Flutter that the UI should be updated. That's always important. Now with that though, if you add this, and you go there again, you should be able to take that picture, save that, and here it is. Now I also want to make sure that it takes the full width here, and to do that we can go back to the image input and there to the image file widget here, and besides setting the fit, I'll then also set the width to infinity, so to double infinity, to make sure that it takes as much width as it can get, which indeed then works as intended. And I will also do the same for the height here and set the height to double infinity so that it will also always take the full height of that container. So that with that, if we save that and I go back here and I take another picture, this looks better. Now with that, the only missing feature is that I want to make this image tappable so that it opens the camera again and I can replace that image with a new image. For that, I'll go back to my widget here, and image file can simply be wrapped with another widget, and that other widget should be the gesture detector, because that is a built-in widget that allows us to listen all kinds of gestures on the child widget. So in this case here, I can add the onTap parameter to listen to taps on that image and then trigger take picture like this by assigning it as a value to onTap if the image is tapped. And now with that addition in place, if we go back here, I can take a picture, of course. And if I then tap on it, I can replace it. If I rotate the camera, which on Mac I can do by pressing the Control key and rotating with the mouse, you see that now the updated picture is taken. So taking those pictures works. Now, of course, they should also be stored and displayed together with our title on that list of places.